Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Security Spot. Welcome to what is going to be the last episode of Framework Fridays. Sorry that this episode took so long to get out. School has been non-stop, but we're here now. Better late than never, right? And this is actually going to be two frameworks in one, just because the one we're about to cover, despite being important, we're going to go over rather quickly, so I figured we might as well lump them both in together, especially since I don't know if or when I'll have the time again. But enough of that. Let's get into it. And yeah, it's kind of sad that this series is coming to an end, but it'll be one thing off my plate, and we can move on to hopefully bigger and better things. Just in case you don't know, a cybersecurity framework is a guide for GRC, cybersecurity work governance, risk, and compliance for the organization to follow to better equip themselves to defending against cyber-related security incidents. And this one, we're going to be talking about HIPAA. This is a law that refers to that medical students know by heart. Anybody who's ever familiar with medicine understands this rule, because patients' health data is extremely important to keep safe. But this doesn't just apply to the medical field, because think of like your Aura rings or your smartwatches. Those collect health data too. They also have to abide by this law, because that is health data related to individuals. But anyways, let's get into it. Alright. In this section, you'll find educational materials specifically designed to give HIPAA-covered entities and business associates insight into how to respond to a cyber-related security incident. And just so we're clear, I'm not going to be going over the related materials here just because of time's sake, but if you want, you can go out and look at more of the stuff for yourself. This is just meant to be a cursory overview so you have an idea of how these frameworks work. Now, how the HIPAA security rule can help defend against cyber attacks. The HHS Office for Civil Rights, or OCR, has produced a pre-recorded video presentation for HIPAA-covered entities and business associates, or regulated entities, on how the HIPAA security rule can help regulated entities defend against cyber attacks. The video is available in English and Spanish. The presentation is intended to educate the healthcare industry on real-world cyber attack trends from OCR breach reports and investigations, and explore how implementation of appropriate HIPAA security rule safeguards can help detect and mitigate common cyber attacks. These topics include OCR breach investigation trend analysis, common attack vectors, OCR investigations of weaknesses that led to or contributed to breaches, and how security rule compliance can help regulated entities defend against cyber attacks. And here's the link to the video presentation in English, and here's the Spanish version. And these were made in October 23rd, 2023, so fairly recently. And this guide and graphic explains in brief the steps for a HIPAA-covered entity or its business associates to take in response to a cyber-related security incident. And here's a checklist. Here's an infographic. They're just meant to show you, if you run an organization, what steps you're supposed to take. Then there is ransomware guidance. Ransomware is an increasingly bigger problem these days, and really the only thing that can help with that is training. I mean, there's also email safeguards and such that can help with that, but ransomware can also target regular individuals. It typically doesn't, because why would you choose trying to find one small fish as opposed to just being able to net entire like batch of fish? I guess entire school of fish. That's the word. Excuse me for this metaphor. Like, why you would just go to the trouble of getting to one fish instead of an entire school? It doesn't make logical sense. That's why most cyber criminals do not bother with regular individuals. They focus on businesses and companies to hack. Doesn't mean they won't hack you, it just means that they're less likely to. And then we talked about this framework, the NIST Cybersecurity framework, and this crosswalk document identifies mappings between, basically similarities between the HIPAA security rule and NIST framework for improving critical infrastructure cybersecurity. And then in 2019, OCR started having quarterly cybersecurity newsletters. I get my cybersecurity newsletters from the Hacker News, but that doesn't mean they're the only source of them. You can get your information from a lot of these different sites. They're all pretty good to read up on. And that's gonna do it for the HIPAA bit. Just a really cursory overview. And now we'll move to we will move to FISMA. This is the last framework that we'll be covering. Not because it's the last framework in the world, but it's the last one that I think is important to cover. There are certainly others that may be more important. But here we are, end of the road. Let's get to it. I've waffled enough in this video. And FISMA requires federal agencies, including CMS, to establish comprehensive information security programs. It emphasizes confidentiality, integrity, and availability, the CIA triad, the foundation of cybersecurity. Mandates annual reviews and assigns oversight to DHS and OMB. And FISMA stands for Federal Information Security Modernization Act. Actually, while we're here, I should have done this earlier, excuse me. No, not GIPA. HIPAA compliance. I just want to define what HIPAA is. The Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996. Alright, back to FISMA, Federal Information Security Modernization Act. And again, this is a law, but the framework is named after the law because it helps you comply with that law. The Federal Information Security Modernization Act, or FISMA, defines a framework of guidelines and security standards to protect government information operations. FISMA was originally passed as the Federal Information Security Management Act in 2002 as part of the E-Government Act. It requires all federal agencies to develop, document, and implement agency-wide information security programs. This law has been amended by the Federal Information Security Modernization Act of 2014, or FISMA reform, passed in response to the increasing amount of cyber attacks on the federal government. So right here you can see the history of the internet in a nutshell. Governments were super confused, unsure how to handle it. Then they started getting a better handle of it in the 2010s as it became more widespread and we all got computers in our pockets, basically. And now, when you think they're having a handle on things, the industry's been blown wide open yet again. That's just the nature of technology, I suppose. FISMA defines 3 security objectives for information systems. the CIA triad: confidentiality, preserving authorized restrictions on information access and disclosure, including means for protecting personal privacy and proprietary information. Integrity, guarding against improper information modification or destruction, and includes ensuring information non-repudiation and authenticity. Availability, ensuring timely and reliable access to and use of information. FISMA compliance. A key requirement of FISMA is that program officials and the head of each agency must conduct annual reviews of information security programs with the intent of keeping risks at or below specified acceptable levels. The Office of Management and Budget, or OMB, is the agency responsible for final oversight of the FISMA compliance efforts of each agency. While FISMA sets the legal standard for annual compliance, NIST, there we are again, is the government body responsible for developing the standards and policies that agencies use to ensure their systems, applications, and networks remain secure. So you'll see that there's a lot of overlap between all these frameworks, and that's because, good policies are good policies. It's like in basically every country in the world, to some extent or another, murder is illegal. That's a bit of an extreme example, obviously, but people have a baseline for how certain things should be. That's why all these frameworks are so similar. Giving employees ransomware training is always going to be a good idea, even if it may or may not address the root cause of the issue. It's still a good treatment. It's still a good job of controlling what you can. Anyways, implement continuous monitoring. Agencies must continuously monitor FISMA-accredited systems to identify potential weaknesses. Any changes should be documented in the System Security and Privacy Plan, SSPP. Continuous monitoring will also allow agencies to respond quickly to security incidents or data breaches. CMS is working towards a more robust approach to continuous monitoring through programs like continuous diagnostics and mitigation and ongoing authorization. Conduct annual security reviews. Program officials and agency heads must conduct these annual security reviews in order to obtain a FISMA certification. So this is one of the few things that has a certification. The other one we went over, the ISO 27001, I believe it was. Certification and accreditation are defined in NIST SP 837, and these organizations also have to regularly perform risk assessments to validate their security controls and determine if additional controls are required. At CMS, this is done through assessments such as the Cybersecurity and Risk Assessment Program, or CSRAP. Then they have to document the controls in the System Security Plan, and it has to be kept in the form of an SSPP. I'm a mature adult, I swear. This is a key deliverable in the process of getting authorization to operate for a FISMA system. Then, federal systems must meet minimum security requirements. NIST SP 853 outlines the suggested security controls for FISMA compliance. FISMA does not require an agency to implement every single control, but they must implement the controls relevant to their systems and their function. At CMS, standards for security controls are documented in the CMS Acceptable Risk Safeguards, or ARS. Perform system risk categorization. Information systems must be categorized according to their risk levels to ensure that sensitive information and high-value asset, or HVA systems, are given the highest level of security. The categorization process considers the type of information contained in or processed by a system and will determine what security controls are needed. The categorization levels follow those prescribed in FIPS Publication 199 from NIST, or the Standards for Security Categorization of Federal Information and Information Systems. At CMS, ISTM categorization happens in CFAX and results in a categorization of low, moderate, or high, depending on the level of impact that would occur if the information or the information system were compromised. And now we're going to discuss what these impact levels mean, what falls under them. A low impact level occurs when the loss of confidentiality, integrity, or availability could be expected to have a limited adverse effect on organizational operations, organizational assets, or individuals. A limited adverse effect means that, for example, the loss of confidentiality, integrity, or availability might cause an interruption to mission capability, but CMS is still able to perform its primary functions. Effectiveness of functions is noticeably reduced, result in minor damage to organizational assets, result in minor financial loss, result in minor harm to individuals. Now, what you're going to see is why these impact levels exist. As you start to work in cybersecurity, or you might already understand now as you're learning, businesses do not want the best security. They do not want the top of the line security. They want the most cost-effective solution. If you're going to spend money on something, you have to justify what you're spending that money on, and you have to make sure that the organization understands why it matters and whether or not the impact level is low, moderate, or yes, high. But what we have going on here is risk appetite. Risk appetite refers to how much risk the company can take on from certain things. So like smaller businesses might get utterly crushed by a DDoS attack on their website, but a much larger organization might have redundancy systems in place because they can afford to where a DDoS attack would have to be very extreme for their website to crash. But anyways, the moderate impact level occurs when the loss of confidentiality, integrity, or availability could be expected to have a serious adverse effect on organizational operations, assets, or individuals. A serious adverse effect means that, for example, the loss of confidentiality, integrity, or availability might cause a significant deterioration of mission capability, but CMS is still able to perform its primary functions. Effectiveness of functions is noticeably reduced, result in significant damage to organizational assets, result in significant financial loss, result in significant harm to individuals that does not involve loss of life or serious life-threatening injuries. Now, quick aside before we continue, again, I just want to state, you're noticing here in these videos, particularly in Framework Fridays, that cybersecurity isn't all Mr. Robot business. It's a lot of paperwork. And the reason for that is IT in business only exists because business has been able to justify having IT. Having cybersecurity in business only exists because businesses have been able to justify cybersecurity. And with business comes paperwork. A lot of the fun stuff is, it does come with a lot of paperwork. And in GRC, it's like primarily paperwork. A lot of risk analysis, a lot of risk assessments, a lot of compliance checking, a lot of security audits. A lot of it might not be fun for a lot of people. That's something I think that you should understand if you're interested in this field, especially if you're interested in the more technical side, which is, I would say, much more in the balance hanging in the balance right now than the GRC side. Not to say that GRC is like the grass is much greener there. The entire job market has its problems, but I would say that all three of them, despite GRC having the most paperwork, are going to involve a lot of paperwork, and you should understand that. You should prepare for everything the field has to offer. Now, lastly, a high impact level occurs when the loss of CIA, I'm just going to say that from now on, could be expected to have a severe or catastrophic adverse effect on organizational operations, assets, or individuals. A severe or catastrophic adverse effect means that, for example, the loss of CIA might cause a severe degradation in or total loss of mission capability. The organization is not able to perform one or more of its primary functions. It results in major damage to organizational assets, results in major financial loss, and it results in severe or catastrophic harm to individuals involving loss of life or serious life-threatening injuries. I was about to say industries, I'm sorry. Anyways, that's it for HIPAA and FISMA. And that's it for our series Framework Fridays. I'm thinking I'm going to cover another series expanding on certain GRC things, like just discussing certain cybersecurity related laws. We've already done a lot of that in this series anyways, but I do think we should go over that. I feel the need to add this disclaimer. I should have added it at the beginning, but this is not legal advice. I want to make that very clear. This is just educational materials for individuals or organizations. But anyways, that is going to be it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been the Security Spot, and it's been a real pleasure. See you guys in the next one. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Have a great day wherever you are.